There is a specific moment that many of my patients describe to me, usually in their early 70s, though sometimes it creeps in sooner. It is not a moment of pain, nor is it a diagnosis. It is a moment of realization. They reach for a carry-on bag to place it in the overhead bin of an airplane, a bag they have lifted 100 times before, and suddenly, it feels as if the bag has been filled with lead. Or perhaps they are gardening, and when they attempt to stand up from a kneeling position, they find themselves looking for a support beam or a chair to hoist themselves up. In that split second, a quiet panic sets in. The internal monologue is almost always the same. They think, "I am fading. I am becoming frail." If you have felt this, I want you to know that you are not imagining it, but you are also not helpless against it. What you are experiencing is not simply the passage of time. It is a biological condition with a name, a mechanism, and, most importantly, a cure. It is called sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is derived from the Greek sarx, meaning flesh, and penia, meaning poverty. Poverty of the flesh. It is the age-related, involuntary loss of skeletal muscle mass and strength. But to treat this as just getting old is a mistake. We must look under the hood at the cellular level to understand why this is happening. Because once you understand the mechanism, you will understand why walking around the block is not enough to fix it. Let us descend into the microscopic architecture of your legs. Your muscles are made up of fibers, and these fibers are grouped into what we call motor units. A motor unit is simply a bundle of muscle fibers connected to a single nerve coming from your spinal cord. Think of it like a lamp plugged into a wall socket. The nerve is the cord, the muscle is the lamp. As we age, a process called motor unit remodeling begins to occur. The neurons, the cords plugged into the wall, begin to degrade and disconnect from the muscle fibers. When the muscle fiber loses its connection to the nervous system, it essentially dies off. It atrophies. This is happening silently every day. But here is the cruel specificity of sarcopenia. It does not target all muscle fibers equally. We have two main types of fibers. Type 1, your slow twitch fibers. These are your endurance fibers, the ones you use to walk or posture yourself. These are remarkably resilient to aging. You keep these for a long time. But type 2 fibers, the fast twitch fibers, these are the first to go. Type 2 fibers are responsible for explosive power. They are the fibers that allow you to catch yourself when you trip. They are the fibers that allow you to stand up quickly from a chair. This is why falls become so dangerous. You haven't necessarily lost the strength to walk. You have lost the specific neurological capacity to react quickly. Sarcopenia is a type 2 fiber killer. It strips away your power before it strips away your endurance. So, we have nerves unplugging and we have fast twitch fibers shrinking. But there is a third villain in this story, and this is the most critical concept I will explain to you today. It is a phenomenon called anabolic resistance. In a 30-year-old body, the process of building muscle is incredibly sensitive. If a young man eats a small chicken breast or lifts a moderate weight, his body immediately screams, "Build muscle!" His chemical pathways light up. But as we enter our 60s and 70s, our muscle tissue becomes, strictly speaking, hard of hearing. The cellular signaling pathways, specifically the mTOR pathway which governs growth, become desensitized. This is anabolic resistance. It means that the same stimulus that worked when you were 40 will do absolutely nothing when you are 70. Your muscles are not dead. They are just stubborn. They need a much louder shout, a much stronger signal to turn on the machinery of repair. This is why casual walking, while excellent for your heart, does absolutely nothing to reverse sarcopenia. The signal is too quiet. Your muscles simply sleep through it. Now, I have painted a somewhat grim picture of disconnecting nerves and stubborn cells. But this is where we pivot. Because we know the mechanism, we can engineer the solution. We can override anabolic resistance. We can force the nerves to reconnect. We can reawaken the fast-twitch fibers. This brings us to the protocol. The solution to sarcopenia is not a pill. It is a strategic application of stress. We must treat your body not as a fragile antique to be protected, but as an adaptive machine that requires challenge. The first pillar of your defense is resistance training, and I must be very precise about your definition of this. I do not mean lifting a 2-pound pink dumbbell 50 times while watching television. Remember anabolic resistance? That signal is too weak. To overcome the deafness of older muscle, we need mechanical tension. You must lift weights that are heavy enough to induce fatigue. You need to send a signal to the central nervous system that says, survival depends on keeping this tissue. When you lift a weight that limits you to perhaps 10 or 12 repetitions, and the last 2 repetitions are difficult, you create a chemical cascade. You force the release of localized hormones like IGF-1. But more importantly, you force the nervous system to recruit those dormant type 2 fibers. If you only walk, you only use type 1 fibers. By lifting heavy, you force the brain to send a high-voltage signal that wakes up the type 2 fibers. You are literally re-innervating the muscle. You are plugging the lamp back into the wall. I know the word heavy can be frightening. You might
worry about your joints or injury. But clinical data shows that supervised progressive strength training is incredibly safe for seniors. In fact, it protects the joints by strengthening the shock absorbers around them. You do not start with a distinct heavy weight. You start with a movement, master it, and slowly add resistance until it challenges you. That challenge is the medicine. Now, let us move to the second pillar. If exercise provides the spark, nutrition provides the bricks. And this is where most seniors fail, not out of lack of effort, but out of misinformation. You have likely heard that you need protein. But in the context of sarcopenia, the amount per sitting is the only thing that matters. This goes back to the concept of the leucine threshold. Leucine is an amino acid, a building block of protein. It acts as the on switch for muscle synthesis. In a younger body, a small amount of protein flips that switch. In your body, the switch is rusty. You need a surge of leucine to force it open. This means that grazing on protein throughout the day, a little egg here, a few nuts there, does not work. You need to hit a threshold of approximately 30 to 40 grams of high-quality protein in a single sitting to overcome anabolic resistance and trigger growth. If you eat 15 grams of protein, your muscle synthesis does not turn on a little bit. It stays off. It is an all-or-nothing event. So, your strategy changes. You don't just eat healthy. You design your meals to have these protein anchors. A large portion of fish, Greek yogurt, or a whey protein supplement. You must reach that threshold at least twice, ideally 3 times a day. You are dosing protein like a drug, because, biologically, that is how it is acting. There is a third component that acts as a catalyst for both the exercise and the nutrition. It is a compound often associated with bodybuilders, but it belongs in the medicine cabinet of every person over 60. That compound is creatine monohydrate. Creatine is not a steroid. It is a fuel source.
It is stored in your muscles and provides the phosphate needed for quick, explosive contractions. Exactly the kind of energy your struggling type 2 fibers need. As we age, our natural creatine stores drop. By supplementing with a small daily dose, usually 5 grams, you saturate the muscle with energy. This allows you to work harder during your exercise, which sends a louder signal to the muscle, which overrides the anabolic resistance. It also draws water into the muscle cell, which creates a hydration signal that protects the protein structure. It is cheap, it is safe, and it is arguably the most well-researched supplement for preserving muscle mass in the elderly. I want to pause here and address the psychological hurdle. I know that starting a regimen of heavy lifting and high
Protein intake feels counterintuitive to the narrative of slowing down that society hands you. But you must reject the narrative of slowing down. Sarcopenia is a feedback loop. You feel weak, so you do less. You do less, so your muscles atrophy. You atrophy, so you feel weaker. This cycle accelerates until you cross a threshold of frailty from which it is very hard to return. We are breaking that loop today. We are replacing it with a positive feedback loop. You lift the weight, your brain reconnects to the muscle. You eat the protein, the muscle repairs itself stronger. You take the creatine. You have the energy to do it again. There is one final biological factor we cannot ignore: vitamin D. We often think of vitamin D for bones, but the vitamin D receptor is present on the nucleus of the muscle cell itself. Low vitamin D levels are statistically linked to reduced grip strength and increased falls. It acts almost like a steroid hormone in the body. If you are deficient, and many of you are, your engine is running without oil. A simple blood test and supplementation can correct this in weeks. Let's bring this all together into a day in your life. You wake up. You take your vitamin D and your creatine. You eat a breakfast that contains 30 grams of protein, perhaps a shake or an omelet, effectively flipping the growth switch on for the morning. You go to the gym or your living room and you perform resistance exercises that make your muscles burn, waking up those fast twitch fibers. You follow that with a lunch that hits the protein threshold again. It sounds like work, and it is, but the return on investment is your independence. The prize is not big biceps to show off at the beach. The prize is being able to carry your own luggage. The prize is getting up off the floor playing with your grandchildren without needing a hand. The prize is walking with the confidence that if you stumble, your fast twitch fibers will fire and catch you. I want you to think back to that feeling of the heavy suitcase. The heavy suitcase is not a sentence. It is a signal. It is your body asking for a louder command. Your muscles are waiting for you to speak to them in a language they can understand. The language of tension, the language of nutrition, the language of resilience. You are not fading. You are simply understimulated. And that is something you can change starting today. This is the biology of your second act. It is not about maintenance. It is about reconstruction. Thank you for listening. Let's get to work.